Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on this new episode of Recovery. My name is Alain Kapatashungu. I'm the co-founder of Frontdoor. And as you guys know, we provide insight that close deals faster to top producing agents in North America, Europe, but as well just recently in continental Europe, which is Portugal and Spain. So in this new episode, we are chatting with Steve Wydler, associate broker at Wydler Brothers of Compass in DC. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Absolutely. So first of all, before we get into anything, let me give you some context on how Steve and I connected, as well as his background as well. So Steve and I were introduced by a mutual friend called Billy Ekofo, who's currently the VP of Business Solutions at leading real estate companies of the world in DC. And then prior to Compass, Steve was the founder and principal broker of Wydler Brothers Real Estate in McLean, Virginia, so in the DC area. As you can tell by Steve's company name, this is a venture started by two brothers, which I just think it's awesome. So in this case, it's Steve and his brother Hans. So Steve is one of the top producing agents in Northern Virginia and has been voted best real estate agent by the readers of Arlington Magazine for 6 consecutive years, which is pretty awesome. So, but I think that the most important achievement for Steve, and you can find this on LinkedIn, by the way, which I think is just awesome. It's arguably his 4.83 Uber rating, which I just think is awesome to mention that in a LinkedIn bio. When I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm just jealous because I'm definitely not on that level yet. So, Steve, thanks a lot for making the time today. And let's kick things off. By just asking you the first question. So in this pandemic, pretty much, can you describe and, if possible, just walk us through your quote-unquote typical workday as we go through this crisis?
Sure. So, in some ways everything's different. In some ways everything stayed the same, right? So, we're doing since whenever it was mid-March, my team been pretty close to 100% virtual.
Oh wow!
So my commute's much better. I just go down to my home office.
Absolutely.
But we used to be in the same physical space on a daily basis. That doesn't happen. So we are definitely, for the first 2 months, we did a weekly Zoom call first thing in the morning and just review what has to happen. Mondays were typically a longer call because we did more strategy and longer term projects. And then Tuesday through Friday was just sort of more tactical, like what has to happen in the next business cycle.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And so we've sort of drifted off that a little bit, in that we only have our scheduled Monday morning calls via Zoom to do the strategy, and then everything else is much more happenstance. I'm on the phone with my team, each of them multiple times a day. There's definitely some inefficiencies with it, but I like to say that the core business, it does bring us out into the field probably more than other businesses. So we're showing how we're preparing listings, but we are able to do it in what I would consider fully compliant with all the safety protocols and wearing masks and not touching things and not being in crowded spaces. So I think we're a little bit fortunate in that regard that we can our business, at least in the DC area, has not been radically disrupted by the safety protocols.
That is awesome. That is definitely awesome. And I love the way that you just pretty much went 100% almost virtual, because I think that's, you can see with some of the team and some of the agents that we were talking to earlier in some of our conversation is that they weren't really used to something like this because technologically speaking, they weren't ready. So I just love the way you've been able to pretty much just switch, flip a switch and just be able to go completely remote and 100% virtual and be able to still conduct businesses as you guys were doing. So that's just awesome. So as a principal broker, Steve, as a broker yourself, like, can you share, maybe go a little bit into detail, like how have you been able to not only stay on top of your team's needs, but also on your clients' needs? Like, how have you been able to do it? You've kind of touched on it, I think, but how have you been able to just maintain that communication?
Sure. So, in my current role, I'm no longer the principal broker. I am an associate broker, and I manage my team. So we are doing a lot of outreach. One of the opportunities we've had during COVID has been to do a lot more client interaction engagement. So
Absolutely.
reaching out to people and finding out, see how they're doing. Are they being safe? If there's anything we can do for them.
Yeah.
It's I hate to say it, but it's an easy phone call to make, because in this world, when people are sort of moving so fast, very few people are getting phone calls just asking, how are you doing?
So true.
And
So true.
one of the real benefits of having sold my brokerage to Compass and being an independent team is I have more time now to devote to these relationships, and that's the gold of real estate, is how impactful your relationships are.
Absolutely, I completely agree on that. This is a really, really familiar thread. I was talking about pretty much the same topic with Mike Papas a few weeks ago, and he was just mentioning exactly what you just uttered, which is you can see the difference between agents who continue to be successful during this pandemic and some of them who already, pretty much closing up shop. It's exactly what you just mentioned. The capacity to just be able to reach out to customer because they're just one phone call away. And that's the difference between some of the agents that we are seeing pretty much being successful in the midst of this pandemic, and some of those who are just pretty much being swept away because the relationship factor has never been there. So that's really interesting what you're sharing there.
Yep.
So yourself, this is something that I've always believed in. As it pertains to crisis. So crisis always reveal or accelerate new consumer behavior. It depends. So what is the one thing that, in your opinion, that has been overlooked by our industry that you think COVID really highlighted as an undeniable demand? This could be a product, this could be a service, this could be a way we work. Like, what is the thing for you that has been highlighted through this pandemic that's not undeniable as a demand?
I would say, the real focus for our team has been having being much more careful about the digital representation of our listings.
Got it.
Buyers today in this market are doing much more vetting of properties.
Absolutely.
So making sure that we are really buttoned up in advance of launch, of anticipating all the questions that might be asked, getting lists of updates, average utility bills, a copy of the plat, just doing all that stuff, and then having a good, wrapping that all up in a nice marketing platform. Whereas before, you could frankly get away with it, because if a buyer liked the front picture of the front of the house, they're going to see it regardless.
Exactly.
They're going to go, right? Now they're looking deep into the digital information to decide, do I really want to take my family, or go into leave my house? Because every time you leave your house, I guess you're taking on some risk. So
Absolutely.
we were good at it before, but now we're really on top of it.
That is awesome. So, as we've mentioned before we have this conversation, so you were in the DC area, I'm in Paris, and the thing that I've been realizing talking to some of our customers in the US, especially in cities like New York, but also here in Paris, like major cities around the world pretty much are just seeing this deceleration as it pertains to home sales. Like, can you just give us maybe a quick snapshot of what's happening in the DC area market, since you just have that incredible level of expertise in that market? Like, what's going on over there?
It's interesting. So when the world ended in mid-March,
Yeah.
there was a real there was a huge fall off of activity. So
Yeah.
it was interesting in that, unlike other shocks we've had in my you know approaching 20-year career in the business,
Wow. Awesome.
where the possible other shocks used to be either typically to the supply side or the demand side.
Okay.
This shock is to both. Like
Oh,
both
wow.
supply and demand both went down.
Wow.
But deals were still happening, and
Okay.
certainly at sort of the bottom half of the market.
Yeah.
The pace of the deals, you were still getting multiple offers in some cases, and properties were moving, but there were
Okay.
fewer listings and fewer buyers back then.
Wow. Okay.
And then sometime in sometime in June, and this is sort of, it's always hard to like analyze what's going on when you're in the middle of it. But I think what we're seeing is the buyer seller activity that would have otherwise happened in the spring, earlier in the spring, started picking up. So we actually are having a pretty robust summer.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think what's going to happen when you look at the year as a whole, I think it's actually going to be in the DC area, at least, volume's going to be flat to what it was last year. When this first happened, I thought it was going to be down 20-30%.
Wow.
But it's catching up. But but if you overlay sort of the two sort of peaks, normal peaks are spring. I think this peak is going to be more summer, maybe even fall.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. It's definitely a completely different outlook. This presents to DC. I was talking with, obviously, Mike, who is based in Florida, but also some agents in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's just a completely different outlook. But that's definitely interesting. So for yourself, pretty much, Steve, this crisis, like, do you think it forced you to obviously redefine, or maybe even at least reimagine how you work as a real estate agent? Like, what have you done pretty much differently, except of not being able to go to the office? Like, what this pandemic just changed in the way you do work, pretty much?
That's a great question. So first of all, we're with Compass, and they have been incredible partners.
Awesome.
Whereas before, when I ran my own brokerage, it was on me to figure out how we were going to adapt. Now they're doing the heavy lifting, and they're doing very, very heavy lifting on
That's good too.
new technology tools and an incredible CRM.
Awesome.
All sorts of virtual open house tools. Just incredible tools. So it's my job to figure out how to use them and incorporate them into our offering.
Okay.
The other thing we're doing is it's forcing me to be more efficient in just my day-to-day. So whereas before I'd go to a listing appointment and I'd bring a teammate with me.
Exactly.
And that was, it was a little bit of it was very helpful to me to have that. Maybe if I'm being honest, maybe there's a little bit of an ego push there to have someone who can sort of like pick up and make sure that all my action items that we committed to are being delivered. Yeah. But now I just go. I don't like scheduling them is so much easier because I don't have to check someone else's schedule.
Absolutely.
I'm not taking up two people's time for something, and so it's made our team more efficient as a result. And so that person who would otherwise come with me, she's able to get a lot more done in the day because I go on, maybe, one listing appointment a day on average.
Okay.
And it's and that's an hour and a half plus the preparation so that is saving a lot of bandwidth for our team.
That's awesome. The key word here is definitely efficiency. That's where everything lies pretty much in this very, very interesting and quite troubling time. So this is more dealing with your leadership as you are obviously one of the top producing agents in the area and just an incredible leader. Like, what are some of the lessons that you have learned about yourself throughout this crisis? Like, things that you just, again, discovered about yourself, about your leadership style, about the way you just conduct yourself, pretty much?
Oh gosh, when you lead a team, like every day is a self-discovery of
Absolutely.
both my strengths and my weaknesses. So, gosh, I don't even know how to answer that. We're trying. The hardest thing to maintain in a virtual world is culture, right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
The Zoom meetings do that, but we certainly haven't socialized as a team since COVID hit. We have very fun and vibrant, calls and a lot. It's funny. Our it's cliche, but my team feels like a family. So
that's awesome.
We know when someone's kid is sick or they're going on vacation.
Absolutely.
Like it's very it's an intimate small group of people that have to operate very efficiently with each other, and it's
awesome.
And it's tough too. So it's like we really try to always be the one trying to lift up the organization and positive, not focus on the negative, not focus on the
what's happening.
Be appreciative of what we have instead of what we don't have.
That's great. Gratitude. It's always a vector and a great motto, especially, and it might sound cliche, but I love it because you can see that, again, the teams that are just outperforming this crisis are exactly the team that resembles to yours, Steve. Those who just value this family aspect. It's not just a company. It's pretty much some kind of this aspect of togetherness that they have. So that's where you're seeing those agency and companies just thriving throughout this crisis. So to follow up on that, on the aforementioned, pretty much. So what advice would you give to a very, very young agent? He's just getting started, unfortunately, in these very, very complicated times. They just got their license. How would you keep this period up? How would you keep their morale? What would you say to them as they just get started in the business in the midst of a crisis, of a pandemic?
I've more so when I ran my brokerage, but I've talked to dozens and dozens of people considering the business, and there's so much I can say, but it's like anything, the day-to-day business of being a real estate agent is not for everyone. It looks. I think the outward appearance of what the job is far different from what it actually is. 90% of agents who get their license aren't successful, and by successful, they aren't able to generate enough income to live off of.
Wow.
Right?
That's a huge number.
It's a huge number, and that's a little bit over the year, but it's and so the 10% who succeed, I think, have a failure is not an option mentality.
Absolutely.
And I will say, one of the things I discovered about myself is I am not good at picking the winners and losers. Like, I don't know, because someone can tell you all the right things in an interview, but you really don't know if someone has that sort of abstract ability to instill. We're helping people make big decisions. Instill confidence in someone and be there. My brother and I use the term deep rudder, like you be their deep rudder through the process and get them through the emotional roller coaster. And it's a challenging business to do that.
Absolutely.
To be a deep rudder, you are constantly putting out energy. When you put out energy, it's tiring. And if you let it get to you, especially if you're new, a lot of new agents, I think, want the deal more than their client does.
True.
And that often leads to very, very, very bad decisions.
True.
Like, because you push your client in a direction that they don't want to go, or you like any business, you probably have some ethical or business practice decisions to make, and sometimes the shortcut seems tempting, but it's a very bad decision long term. If if you somehow sort of compromise your ethics or own moral compass, then that strategy. And like I said, you can't want the deal more than your client.
Absolutely. I definitely agree on that. And it's to me, real estate agent, obviously successful one as yourself are pretty much some kind of a rare breed. But what I love with agents is that it's such an easy comparison to entrepreneurship. It's exactly the same thing. And even the number you just shared, it's exactly the same as it pertains to entrepreneurship. Like a lot of people are launching companies, but only 10% of those are actually making it out. So it just always comes down to this level of patience and perseverance and just grit at the end of the day. So that's why I always say that to me, agents, they're just the really successful one are just entrepreneurs. That's why you can see some of them just ending up building their own brokerages, because they have that fiber. They just have that that fabric as it pertains to entrepreneurship as well. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and I would add to that is the challenge of this business. Well, first of all, is getting enough wind in your sails to be successful. But once you're there, the challenge is really scale.
Yeah.
To go from to there's two ways to do it. You go from 10 million in volume to 20 million in volume.
Yeah.
Well, that's twice as much work.
Absolutely.
That's not a scale. How do you, as one person, how do you do more volume without a directly proportional adding that much work to your day?
Absolutely.
And then and that's sort of like what's interesting about this business. There's so many different there's as many ways to scale as there are teams, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you slice it up? And what most people do is they don't think strategically about structure and systems.
Agreed.
And technology, and they just sort of like I just need a smart person. I'm gonna hire a smart person.
He's gonna figure it out.
We'll figure it out. And and then you just have two people bumping into each other. And hoping balls don't drop. So
exactly.
The business inherently does not want to be scaled, right? Every deal is unpredictable, and it throws off its own projects at you, and it is very hard to figure out how to do that efficiently.
I agree. I definitely agree on that one. So to cap it out, so the last question that I would love to ask you is, so on a personal level, on a business level, what would be some of your objectives pretty much for the remainder of the year? Any vacations coming up? I know maybe you're just going somewhere in the next couple of weeks. What's happening for you over the next couple of months?
I've learned, I've been in this business long enough to realize there's like almost no such thing as a full vacation day. You have to fight and block out your time to do stuff.
Absolutely.
Like that. So when I do stuff with my daughters, I really try to be present and with them.
Yeah.
And so like I'm taking one of my daughters to like a little trip, a 4-day trip next weekend. My team is going to work for me, and it's going to be, but I will check in every day. It's not like I can fully step away.
Absolutely.
But it's, this business, people buy and sell homes when they're not working. So that's usually weekends and evenings, right? So
yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. That is awesome. Really, thanks again, Steve, for making the time today. So that's a wrap for us for Recovery Episode 5 with Steve Wydler from Wydler Brothers of Compass. So you can catch this episode on YouTube and on all platforms streaming podcasts. And remember, in the recovery, don't just get back to the same place, but get to a better place. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's it, Steve. We're done.
Thanks. I'd love to listen to some of the other ones you've done. Can you send me a link to that?
Absolutely. I can send you the one we did with Mark Choi and the one we did with Mike Papas. I can send you those one. Yeah, definitely.
Tell me give me like just a quick summary of where Frontdoor is now and what you challenge.
Yeah, so right now where we are is that we really made tremendous progress, especially here in Europe. So I spent the entire last year pretty much being in Portugal and Spain. And now what we are doing is that we completely moved from, so initially when you and I connected, it was more a play on the website for agents where we were helping them just be better at scheduling and things of that nature. So we kind of broaden our scope because now we just literally live inside of an email, inside of an email inbox of an agent pretty much. So what happens now is when you market your property, when your team, for example, market your property, it could be on Zillow, Trulia, whatever you guys market, what would end up happening is that somebody will connect back with you. This could be to ask more information. This could be to ask for showing. And basically what happens at that point, since you have Frontdoor living inside of your email inbox, we just take that email and then we have now the capacity and the partnerships to literally in a split second tell you who's behind that lead. And then we just graduate that data, we graduate that lead, and then you now as an agent, you just have this entire, some kind of a command center possibility where you can now decide, okay, I actually have a property, this could be interesting for that client. This is not something that I want to put my time in just right now. So you just have now this incredible level of information from name, first name, email, where they live, how much money they're making, what they're working, what is their past, activity as it pertains to have they been evacuated or not. Like all of those information just are available at your fingertips, and then from there you can just decide what do you want to do with that, and then it automatically goes into your CRM as well. So we just we kind of broaden the scope of the product, and now we're really exciting. So we work with teams like Remax and Century 21 and some others from Canada to the US and here in Europe, obviously.
Oh, great! That sounds really exciting. Good for you.
Yeah. So that's where we are now. So that's really interesting. More than happy to just even send you a link to kind of see how it looks like. So I think it could be great to have your feedback as well on that.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Check out a company called 5 Street.
5 Street. Okay.
5 Street. So my brother and I were co-founders of that company.
Awesome.
It has a lot of similarities to what you're doing. We sold it to Move about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago.
Awesome.
But it was a lead conversion tool.
Yeah.
What we
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna check it out. So I have some homework when I get back to you with those links, so you can check it out. And really, thanks for making the time, Steve. This is something that I really wanted to do with you.
You're a true professional. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
I appreciate your time, Steve. Have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.